Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's installment.
Hey, hey, I know y'all missed us.
Yes, you did. So, this week, we are going to be talking about Black unity is not equal Black solidarity. But before we go into that, there's so many things that have happened since last week. So, today we're not going to do our little pop culture thing, even though The Real Housewives of New Jersey is premiering tonight. But I was just saying I was bad hype about it. And I heard that the Real Housewives of Miami is casting. So I'm excited.
Ew.
But back to real life. The first thing that we're going to talk about tonight is the crisis in Texas. So because global warming, our country currently looks like a hot pocket that was not cooked in the microwave, where the middle is frozen and the ends are crispy and overcooked. However, the temperatures alone are not the cause of the crisis. Lucy, where do we begin with what's happening in Texas right now?
Well, if you've ever come to any of my trainings, you've heard me talk, whatever, I'm always asking us to think about the land, think about sovereignty, think about indigenous folks, and just think about if we're not good stewards of the land, if the land is not free from injustices, we don't stand a chance. And what's happening in Texas is that, so what's happening in Texas should really concern those of us in South Florida, because as you can see, Texas is not accustomed to getting snow and getting these kind of temperatures. And this is an indication, and this is being exacerbated by climate disaster, climate change, right? And so we who are here, who have to deal with hurricanes, what other natural disasters will become will become exacerbated because we are not good stewards of the land? So will our cold get even colder and more frigid? And what will that do? Because our houses are not well insulated for these kind of things. Because our heaters be play, right? So and Texas is in the same situation as us. Like their houses are suitable for heat and things of that nature. Not for all of this other stuff. So I am actually, as someone who was born and raised in Florida, am very concerned and watching this very closely, because how this is playing out in Texas is kind of like a playbook for other major cities who are not accustomed to certain kinds of climate things, having to deal with inclement weather that they don't even have the infrastructure to deal with. The last thing I will say is, deregulation is why
Thank
Texas
you.
is
That's what I was about to say.
Deregulation. These people wanted to have their own grid because Texas is truly obsessed with that. They are their own country. They are their own whatever. So they want to have their own grid. And because they have their own grid, because of deregulation and 25 years of Republican rule, put them here. And mind you, this 501(c) that manages their electricity, it's like it has a $73 million budget, like paying people googlobs of money, who are both in Texas and out of Texas, who are not managing risk. Because final thought on this is, just like, my final thought on this is, just like, there are some things private companies cannot do, only governments can do and should do. And the privatization of things that should be in government's hands is also going to do us in.
And it really comes down to the fact that, like, when you look at where has electricity right now and where doesn't, and actually they're choosing to have quote unquote rolling blackouts, which are not rolling because literally they turned it off and we're not able to turn it back on again for the poorest, brownest, and blackest folks in these municipalities. That this is when we talk about institutional racism. This is when I get really frustrated that people want to be harping on cancel culture as a way to escape accountability, when in reality, what we're saying is real. And here's a perfect example of the operationalizing of anti-Blackness and white supremacy.
Yeah, and what's really, really sad, Krystina, is just like it's, I guess it's kind of okay if they turn off the lights and you're able-bodied, but what about our disabled kin, people who need electricity for their mobile devices, for all of these other
Their
things?
medication.
What are people who are on our medication, on ventilators? Like, yo, like this is a human rights violation and atrocity on an epic level. And it's concerning that people were making fun of people from Texas on Twitter, like making fun of them, this, that, and a third. Like, yo, being cold without heat is not cute, especially if you're not prepared for that. Because again, winter requires certain kinds of clothing, certain kinds of infrastructure, this, that, and a third. Like it's
and I didn't believe it was going to be this bad. Like that was the thing, because just like similar to how when in South Florida we have hurricanes and people think, oh, whatever, like they always say we're going to get hit and we don't, and then bam, there's that chance that it actually does happen, and folks were not prepared. And the other thing is that it's not just that, oh, you're without electricity, wow, go and like plug your thing in the car or whatever. We're talking about no heat, indoor temperatures in the 30s consistently. When your house doesn't have insulation, people are getting frostbite in their homes. People will be losing limbs. We're talking about mass amputations. And then you have, it is so cold that pipes are bursting. So you have no running water. You have no running water for days. And the damage to the pipes, most of the time, are permanent. So you're looking at tens of thousands of dollars of damage in burst pipes. Literally, there were photos that I saw of pipes burst in the living room, and you just see sludge everywhere. And you're thinking about the cost to replace the piping. Then you talk about the damage, the water damage and infestation. We are in a pandemic, okay? There are people who were self-isolating because they have COVID that cannot self-isolate because it's no longer safe to be in their home. Or people who had family members in the same household who had COVID, who were probably self-isolating in one room, then now in order to maintain body heat, you need to be in the same room. So again, policies and elections have consequences. And this is decades in the making, and it is a perfect storm for utter disaster and human catastrophe. And that sounds very dramatic, but all I need you to do is literally look at what is happening in Texas for 0.5 seconds. Go on Twitter, go on Instagram, go on TikTok, humanize this, because I think folks that are making jokes and being slick don't actually know anybody that is currently living in these conditions.
Yeah, I talked to one of my really good friends yesterday, Tosca. She's usually on here watching these things, and she lives in Texas. She lives in Houston, and like it's bad, it's dire. Like people are having to get in their car every day for heat, and so thinking about who owns cars, who has money to put gas in their car, and meaning that and
are
thinking
the gas
about
stations functioning without electricity?
And she was telling me like how like McDonald's is open, Burger King is open. There are 35 car pileups because this, that, and a third. But yet we the same kind of people who don't want to pay these people $15 an hour. And no matter what is going on in the world, we expect people to show up to McDonald's, Burger King, and everywhere else to flip them burgers, give you your fries so you can have your comfort, so you can have your needs met. But mind you, they're not having their needs met. And like, it's truly, this is a catastrophe. This is a human rights violation. And I'm thinking about disabled people, and I'm also thinking about children. Yes. What is the impact of this frigid weather on special needs kids, on just the babies. Like, you heard of a mom and a daughter who died because she turned on the car, and for the heat she died of carbon monoxide poisoning. A lot of people don't know that can happen.
Yes.
People are bringing grills inside,
Which
causing fires, causing whatever. So literally, because these folks are not used to this kind of weather, they're making political calculations that they don't even know are deadly. So even before the weather kills them, they are putting themselves in a it's really sad. And honestly, I don't think we're talking about this enough.
It's yesterday. I've been like avoiding the news. I read my news, but I've avoided like cable news and the like that I used to consume a lot. And I turn on the news because I'm like, all this shit is happening. Like, I'm expecting wall to wall coverage. I'm expecting Fabimo Creek, not even a peep of what is happening. And then like until like maybe the 10 o'clock or like 8 o'clock news coverage. And I'm thinking of like prime time news. You should be talking about how there are 4 million people without electricity in running water in the United States of America.
Yeah,
on a Monday.
The way our news is curated, people who don't have access to Twitter, Instagram, Democracy Now, like whatever your other quote unquote alternative ways of getting media, like something could be happening in the next state over that you know nothing about. And like, that's a problem. That's a problem. Because very similar to, I am actually shocked that a water treatment plant in Florida a week ago was the victim of a cyber attack where the hacker attempted to poison an entire town. And the manager on duty found it and whatever. We still don't know if it was a person, a group of people, or a country. And you know what the Slate article that I read said? Like, it's actually a shock that this doesn't happen more often to us, because that is how vulnerable we are. So again, thinking about, we're not doing what we're supposed to do to protect ourselves against climate, and the fact that hot places will become hotter, dangerously hotter. Cold places are going to become dangerously colder. And because they haven't worked on their grid, they had to turn off the lights because they didn't want fires. That too is another issue. Then you have what's happening in California. Like, them fires are going to continue to come. Like, y'all, this is scary. And for those of us who live in Florida, I just cannot believe that this was not on a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week loop, that someone tried to poison our fellow United Statesians in our state. Like, I don't know. Like, am I tripping?
I don't even know the resolution of the incident. Like, I heard the one story and then never heard anything about it again. It's been a week. Again, wall-to-wall coverage. Like, there should be, and there's this obsession. So there's this obsession with both political parties about infrastructure that never actually happens. I like to say it's never like the same thing with immigration. Happens. Like, people love to harp on these issues without ever actually doing anything about it. And so I'm curious to see what is going to happen. I mean, you already have folks, elected officials in Texas saying that it's the wind turbines. So how are you going to go on national television and admit that only 10% of electricity is generated by alternatives to fossil fuels and then blame it on the 10%? Please make that make sense to me. You want to tell me that natural gas and petroleum are what keeps your electrical grid 80%, 80+% of your electrical system, but you want to say some frozen wind turbines, which never happened. Literally, that picture was like from Sweden in 2015. It's not even like real. Like, it's embarrassing and it's disingenuous. And I actually have no hope of there being any like, folks are like, oh, right, like now we can focus on infrastructure and this is why the Green New Deal. No, honey, boo-boo. That is not happening.
Stop, please.
Not happening. It's like,
please. No, we're
zero hope.
Actually, we're making, so what we here on Earth have decided, and not that the United States is Earth, but unfortunately what the United States does has a huge impact on the Earth. We here in the United States have decided we're not gonna do anything about climate because no one has the political will to do the right thing. We're still fracking. We're still not we're not divesting from gas. We're not pushing to have you see how like is it Chevy recently said by 20 whatever all of their cars are going to be electric. The government should have mandated that a long time ago.
10 years ago.
I'm glad that
10 years ago.
Right. So I'm glad that they are whatever, but we cannot wait for these multi-billion-dollar corporations to do the right things. We need government to regulate and look and say, like, look, boo-boo, you got 20, you got 30. We get rid of these cars and how they're doing. Y'all, like, I don't want to sound like a broken record. Y'all, there's no planet B. Elon is not putting you on his rocket, boo-boo. He's not putting you on. And when private citizens, they're getting very close for private citizens to go up there, baby, you with your middle class income, you not going. You are not going to be
There's
able
no
to
spirit
afford
flight
to
to
go.
Mars. Sorry. like
your money ain't that long, boo. So it's just like y'all better reinvest in Earth. Y'all better reinvest in this planet, and that's all I'm gonna say.
So I will say, there is this misperception that folks, and I'm not saying that you said this, I just want it for folks that are listening, that this is in no way trying to like shame working class folks who are not prioritizing climate. I think what happens is that there is not an alignment with our voting and our advocacy with the issues, because with the issues that we actually care about, and we know firsthand what the impacts of environmental degradation are, because it's our communities that feel it first. So
we're never going to shame
when there's flooding, when there's anything like that. So just, that was my little disclaimer. That was not targeted at you.
Yeah,
a disclaimer.
Thank you for highlighting it. Yeah, we're never going to be team shit on low income and working class people. On the contrary, because when we think about, like, even if the United States is not the world, but does the most damage to the world in a very specific kind of way, then like actually people who are middle class and upper middle class actually do bear more of that brunt of low income and working class folks. So it's like the same thing. And so no, I'm talking to those of us who do have the funds, who have our fancy friends, who are in a very particular kind of bubble. Like, you know what's interesting? Every day that passes by, and I see that United Statesians don't take to the streets and protest climate and how we are literally up against a clock and we're losing. We're like, we are far behind what we're supposed to do. I'm actually really shocked. I'm actually really, really shocked. Like, especially for those of us who live in coastal cities, y'all, it's bad. It's going to get bad. The waters are rising. South Florida is built on limestone. So which means that those rocks are porous, which means it doesn't matter where you are in South Florida, that water is going to come. Now, there are some places you stand a better chance, but a better chance does not mean that place is going to be dry. There are parts, look at the map of Miami, put it on your chest, because it's how it looks. That landmass is not going to exist like that. How it looks on the map. It's not going to exist like that. And so, y'all, I cannot stress enough. I don't want to act like I'm standing in a theater saying fire, but low key, we are in the theater, and it actually is a fire.
So so there's so many other things that are happening, and like to try and get to it does feel like everything is on fire right now.
Everything is on fire. I don't even know if we got in this hour how much we'll cover, but we'll do our best.
I was like, we aimed really high. Like, yo, if you see this outline, we were really ambitious, but we'll see what happens.
So ambitious.
So I'm already cutting stuff in my mind. So there is a we're going to keep this segment very brief because we all knew this was coming. And this is the impeachment failure. We know what, like, really quick, what accountability of white supremacists in the United States has never happened, and I personally have zero faith of it actually happening, because you cannot regulate yourselves. If that is anything that the United States has taught us in history, is that whether it be economic, political, so like interpersonal, what are we not going to do as Americans? Regulate ourselves. So, any thoughts on your hot takes on the impeachment?
Ooh, my hot takes. I think the impeachment managers did a superb job. Chef's kiss. Thorough, rooted in their values, did what they had to. They did what they had to do within their parameters. I am grossly disgusted and mad that there was no testimony. We know that we were never going to get 17 Republicans to vote. However, for the American people who voted this progressive blue wave of folks, and mainly we voted for those people based on accountability, a very particular certain kind of accountability. By not having people testify, I think that was a dereliction of responsibility. I actually think Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi are not the leaders for this time in this moment. She was good during the Obama years. And like I was telling you, this is my spicy hot take. I actually don't believe that Nancy Pelosi believes in accountability, that she's practicing accountability. Because whenever impeachment shows up, she wants this rush job. She wants this like very whatever. And it's just like, you can't do that. And to me, it's just like, I think there's a lot of issues. And I keep thinking about Maxine Waters is a highly decorated legislative person. The only reason why she's not Speaker of the House is racism. And so that leaning feminism, where I'm supposed to be happy that a woman is a leader, Nancy Pelosi right now, I actually think she's sullying whatever legacy she had before. It's sullied now. She's doing a bad job. So again, I'm really just shocked that the Senate was like, let's just pack it up, let's go. Trash. And what's my final comment? My final comment is that people want to tell us all the time abolishing the police is like grandiose, ridiculous. That's never going to happen. You want people to reinvest in the criminal justice system, but you just showed the American people that it's totally fine to betray your country, to be treasonous, to cause the deaths of people, and nothing's gonna happen to you. And so, to me, it's just like, that is a very powerful statement that was made last week. And obviously that's not the Democrats' fault, that's the Republicans. And I think only time will tell the impact of this particular harm and the harm and what it will do to our republic and how it will further corrode. And I think the Democrats had a chance to really go all the way in a very specific kind of way, and they didn't. And that's interesting. I have nothing to say about the Republicans because I'm not a Republican, and the Republican Party, in my opinion, is 150% unequivocally a white supremacist party. If you are not a white supremacist and you are actual conservative, you are still part of the Republican Party, you're lost. You can always become an independent. But if you're still in that party, that's because you obviously believe with their talking points and dog whistles. These dog whistles have become tambourines. They've become whatever. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. Mitch McConnell with his speech after the fact, like, this is trolling, this is disrespect. Like, the disrespect of the American people last week was a bit much for me.
I don't even, was a lot. Like, I was just like, I didn't watch it. I was very upset that it preempted my General Hospital for 4 days. I was like very, very much over this. I expected nothing. I do agree that the impeachment managers did an amazing job. And I think that it also shows the talent that is underutilized and rarely gets a spotlight on, especially the representative of the Virgin Islands, who does not actually have a vote in Congress, right? They're a seated representative, but because we are colonizers, because we have territories get a representative that does not get to vote. So that was like the biggest slap in the face for me, because you have this brilliant mind here, an effective communicator, like really effective communicator, and you know, she can't actually actively represent Americans in the Virgin Islands because they're a territory.
You hate to see it.
And just for folks that don't know, other folks that have representatives that don't get to vote are DC. So DC, Guam, and Puerto Rico are the other ones that don't get to vote in Congress. So, my week, if you follow me on social media, you know that I had to take a deep breath because this is like such a shit show. Okay, so if you follow me on social media, you know that I have been subsumed with what is happening in Haiti right now, not just from a observer view, but really we have two dual crises in terms of immigration and in terms of U.S. foreign policy, and in terms of, well, actually a tertiary crisis is democracy in Haiti. All right, so I'm going to give a quick summary and then we'll like talk about it a little bit. So last year we were supposed, I say we interchangeably, I'm talking about Haiti here. So Haiti was supposed to have elections. This is what you have as a hyphenate. Supposed to have elections like at the municipal level and at the national level, including the president. There were no elections. People were raising the alarm. Then when are the elections happening? But the Trump administration and the international community at large kind of co-signed on Jovenel Moise, the whatever we want to call him right now, but he was the president at the time. I guess he's still the president, but we're gonna get into that. Did not schedule elections. So we enter 2021 a week ago, or I have a calendar here, sorry. A week ago or a week and a half ago, was supposed to be his last constitutional date as president, and he decides he's still going to be there. No elections materialize. He says, oh no, elections are supposed to happen next year because the day that I actually took office, So we have 5-year presidential terms instead of 4-year presidential terms.
Yeah, that's the quibble. Like, are we in the 4 or are we in the 5?
But here's the thing. So there is this like misconception. I'm going to go into my commentary. There is this misconception that countries that have political instability are fundamentally flawed in terms of democracy and don't have strong institutions and don't have strong legal frameworks and don't know what the hell that they're doing, when that is incorrect. Because actually the Haitian constitution is very, very detailed and foresaw folks questioning when their term ended because of delays in the start date of their presidency. So actually the Haitian constitution says it is not based on your inauguration date. It is based on the ending of the previous president. So 2016 was when the previous president's term ended, regardless of there being a delay in you being installed because you had less than 10% of the vote of the population. We're going to get into that's a whole other conversation. But regardless of there being delays in you actually being sworn in, the clock started when the previous president's term ended, not when you feel, okay, I have now had a full 5 years to my satisfaction. So there is a constitutional crisis. We have no legislative body because all of those terms expired because there were no elections, and those people stepped back from power. We have mayors of regions whose terms expired because there were no elections, and the de facto president has been installing people to replace them. We have a Supreme Court that has had people removed. So the validity of the Supreme Court is also in place. So we basically have one quote unquote functioning body of government, which is illegitimate and illegal. And on top of that, there are deportations happening. Over 600 people have been deported to Haiti since the first day of Black History Month.
And that really brings us, like, I have nothing to add to the Haitian commentary, like nothing to add other than like it brings us to the larger conversation about unity versus solidarity. Yeah, it just brings us to, when I think about the conversations that happen in South Florida and how people are really invested in certain Latin American countries, and Haiti is a country in Latin America, but people are not really invested in like supporting, digging deep, supporting those who are from there, you know. It's just really funny, really interesting. I'm gonna keep it cute and not name some things today on this live, but it's just like, you know, it's very interesting how when it's just really interesting whose democracy we're rooted in, who we think deserve democracy, whose citizens we think are smart, whose citizens we don't think are smart, you know. But like, whatever, child, you know what I mean. You speaking code. Some of y'all watching this will get this, and if you don't, oh well.
Well, I mean, it's also whose trauma is real, whose trauma is important, right?
Exactly.
Because there's a big segment of our population that is actually traumatized, concerned, insecure due to the conditions that are happening in country, you know, don't get centered because it's always unstable, which is not the case.
And it also thinks about, like, it's interesting how like countries that are going down the road of dictatorships, that's concerning, but other countries, no matter what happens there, it's not a dictatorship. It's just business as usual over there. And I just, you know, the Haiti thing is like deep and real, because obviously, for those of us who are first generation hyphenated, for those of us who our parents came over here, like the Haitian diaspora is very split on what's going on. Like there doesn't seem to be like a uniform of is he in year 5 or is he in year 6? And that is causing like this major this, that, and a third. And it's a mess, but it's our mess. And I was watching a video right before we got on here where the person was like really clear, like, Haiti is for Haitians. It's not for the Clintons. It's not for the Bushes. And the person was rattling off like other American, whatever. This is like, Haiti is for Haitians. And I love that. And so because Haiti is for Haitians, Haitians got to figure it out. And I trust my people to figure it out. But this is imperialism. This is what it looks like. Because, you know, last time there was a State of the Union address, somebody's president brought somebody's president who was whatever to the State of the Union and heralding their country in a very specific kind of way. How come Haiti can't get no love? How come Haiti can't get no whatever? And not that we need to be occupied by the United States again, because we've done that already. We don't need you to occupy us. We don't need you to come like create a coup. You've also done that. However, what we do need to understand is like, how do we have a smart geopolitical conversation about Haiti that doesn't start with the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere?
So over it.
And let's just have a real conversation, like a real conversation that these are smart political actors with a lot of political acumen. And like, just because they're poor does not mean that they're not just because the people taking to the streets are poor doesn't mean that they don't have brilliance, and they don't understand, and they don't have sovereignty and agency and know how to advocate for themselves. Like, we are the people who kicked out our enslavers. Baby, trust and believe, we take politics really seriously. We know what we're doing.
And I think, imagine what would be possible and how much there would be engagement and understanding if we constantly framed it as Haiti, the first free Black republic in the world. Just like y'all can take the time to type out the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, which actually we're tied with like Bolivia, but anyway, not gonna do that. But if we want to get technical, but imagine if it was framed that way consistently, what the consciousness shift would be.
Mm-hmm,
And so,
which brings us to this week's topic, right? Like,
mhm.
so here we are, all breathing a sigh of relief because we have a new president. We were so happy that we have a Black VP, and the first day of Black Futures Month. The people whose blueprint we should be studying as in regards to Black liberation and sovereignty and all those kinds of things are being deported. And I would have to say, for the large part, no one's really talking about it.
And I would say, so it's not, and on that point of the deportations, or in this case expulsions that were happening, it was not just to Haiti. It was overwhelmingly to Black countries. So we're talking about Jamaica, we're talking about countries in West Africa. Like this is
was it Honduras too?
Yes. And it's us, it is a slap in the face as we, have this historic Black immigrant in the, in the Oval Office, and
of Jamaican descent.
And we have Black History Month, and we're doubling down on racial equity and racial justice, that apparently does not apply to our immigration system, which is why, again, I scream from the rooftops that immigration is a Black issue, which brings us
150%.
To the issue of unity. So Lucy, explain for the people what is generally meant when folks say Black unity.
So what folks are generally talking about is just like, I'm a ride with so and so because they Black. I'm rooting for, again, when Issa Rae was on the red carpet, I'm rooting for everyone that's Black. That's literally Black unity, and that's cute. That's cute in a way. Like if you are accustomed to Black Twitter, if you're accustomed to like Black spaces on these social media apps, what you see being performed is Black unity. However, when we're talking about like what is going to take reparations, what is it going to take to frame immigration as a Black issue, now we're talking about issues of solidarity. And I love and care for you, Krystina. A big part of that has to do with Blackness, and we are politically aligned. We are in solidarity. We have a shared vision of the world. Sometimes we differ on which roads to take to those visions of the world, but I feel like every week, you and I are constantly in conversation with each other, re-clarifying who we are. What's your political stance? What's my political stance? It's like, I agree with that. I agree with that. We are in a constant practice of solidarity. It's not just so trust Black women, hate cis,
yes, queen.
using all the like the speak. Yeah, that has a time, that has a place. That is not going to get any of us free as we understand getting our human rights codified in these United States. Solidarity is going to do that. And so when 60 some odd Haitian folks can get deported, when there was a report just put out that lots of people are detained, but for whatever reason, Haitians have the highest bill be detained. What's up with that? And solidarity is the thing we're going to have to be more practiced at to understand that immigration is a Black issue, and that the same way we said last week that this assumption that Black people don't have a geopolitical analysis. Black solidarity asks us that even if you are a Black person and you find yourself not having a geopolitical analysis, how can we invite you to have one? Because what happens to Black people over there eventually is going to happen to Black people over here. And so this is what we mean. Like Black unity is like it's cute. It's accessories. It ain't it's empty calories. It ain't the meal.
As like family. So like there you can be family with people, right? It's a kinship, right? You're family with people. However, there's your cousin that's your best friend. right? Like that
Right.
relationship is not the same as
Right. There's your favorite auntie who you could tell anything
exactly.
to. She's
And you're
your
on the same
secret
page, you
keeper.
develop each other.
Yeah, you're on the same page, right?
Right.
As opposed to your other auntie, you're like, no, girl, I'm good.
But you right. But we're in this family. So I think of unity as like kinship, as culture,
fictive kinship too, right? Like, because understanding, like, Black people are from all over the place. What exactly makes us kin? It's the shared understanding of, like, once we get here, how white supremacy responds to us. That's the thing that makes us kinship. So I mean, I don't know. We have a lot of inside jokes, but one would even argue, are we trauma bonding with each other?
I definitely think that Blackness in the United States, and I would even argue Blackness globally, is a trauma bond, because honestly, our identity is rooted in how we navigate white supremacy. But I digress. That could be a whole other topic, which we could.
And here's my disclaimer: we are not, like, there is more to Blackness than
Yes.
what, like, white supremacy puts on it. Like, and there are, like, Krystina and I, like, find joy in being Black. We don't. It's like, but at the same time, very keenly aware of the outside forces that gets put on our Blackness that causes a lot of issues, and that forces Black people who maybe would never have anything in common, would never come together, but because of how we're being subjugated in various similar ways, we come together. So when we come together, we have to do the hard work of figuring out what's gonna keep us together, because Blackness in and of itself is gonna have to go further and deeper than just Blackness.
Which is where I think of solidarity as me being as invested in issues and an experience that I don't experience as a person who is directly impacted, because I know that our fates are linked. So
right.
I may not be trans. However, I know that what happens to Black trans women happens to me, right? Like
150%.
That we can't achieve a just and liberated future if we are both not free, right? And so I think of solidarity, and operating from a place of solidarity rather than unity, is that that is actually where we put the we before the I. It is where we put the collective over the individual, because a lot of times we have folks that, like, that just, well, I've been in the United States. My family's been here since the beginning of slavery, and I really don't care about immigration because I've been here, not my problem. Right. Or, I am male presenting, and so the issues that affect women and femme identifies folks, don't really care about it because I could, that's not my problem. I have my own types of problems. Or, I'm pro-Black, but I never actually unpack my own internalized racism. Like, these are all, like, I am pro-Black, but I have never unpacked U.S. imperialism. So I really don't have a problem with how the United States, shows up in other countries. And I proudly wear that. Like, if we're not able to address any of these things, we cannot move forward into futures where our communities can thrive. Because you're then reducing who is community and who is Black, and all of those are Black.
And this is a beautiful segue to talk about the ADOS movement. So the ADOS movement is a group of Black people. So ADOS stands for American Descendants of Slaves. And so these are people who are very serious about reparations, which I am too, you are too. Everybody, the Americas there should be a Council of the Americas and be like, pull these funds together and send these checks to everybody, right? But these particular group of Black folks are African Americans. And when they say America descendants, they mean they only want to talk about and care about the issues of Black people whose ancestors were enslaved on these lands.
United States.
So to them, the United States. So to them, to them, they're about unity. They're trying to do the unity thing with only those people. But that premise is flawed because the United States is not the world. And so we do tend to say the United States of America, but this is not there is the Americas. And last time I checked, Black people were scattered across the Americas and were enslaved. And so this is where, on its head, it looks like it's trying to do solidarity, but it's a very flawed thing of unity that's rooted in what starts to sound like almost nativist and nationalist, which is very dangerous.
Like, and for me, so I had not heard of the ADOS movement. Actually, Lucy is the one who put me onto it, and I realized that it was very, very like off-putting. And I think is one of the major challenges that we're going to have moving forward as we have reparations. I don't think the issue of reparations and the fact that like it needs to have a scope is the problematic thing. Like personally for me, like that doesn't bother me. I think more of the rhetoric and the US centric identity of folks who ascribe to this ideology are what is a challenge for Black solidarity and Black unity, because you are like, if you ever listen to folks who like identify as like ADOS, like it is alarming. It is alarming as somebody who I am of the first generation to be born in these United States, right?
Yeah, and a lot of their talking points, if you didn't know what they were talking about and you did like a colorblind experiment, it starts to sound really weird, like almost neo-Nazi. And not to say like, obviously I'm not saying reverse racism or anything of that nature, but like it's just really like, how do we get free like that? If the whole thing, I only want to build with Black people whose people were enslaved on these lands, what's a political end to that? Like what is to be gained from that when there are 43 million of us? At least the last census, don't know what this census will say. 43 million of us are not in fact African American. And
exactly,
do they not matter? Those of us who are first generation, second generation, do we not have wants? Do we not have needs, dreams, and ambitions? Like, I think there is always a place to talk about specificity, always. And we should not, because we're always talking about the vastness and the breadth of Blackness, but this ain't it. And so again, it appears it's doing a solidarity thing, but really it's just the most frivolous, most harmful act of unity that there could be.
And I think being in a place like Florida, where we have the largest population of Black immigrants in the country, that, if we were to remove the Black immigrant population, what would, like, the percentage of African Americans is small, right? Like how do you actually build political power? How do you actually have accountability without all Black people? And I think that's the overarching theme of this conversation, is how do we actually have political power, accountability, freedom, and how are we actually able to thrive, not just in the United States, but globally, if we are not talking about all Black people?
Yes, and this is the hard work that we need to do, of like reminding each other that it's all Black lives, not some Black lives, not the Black lives who were enslaved on these lands. Like, what does that even mean? Like, if we understand migration and how people have been moving, like, we're like, again, colonialism did a lot of harm, chattel slavery did a lot of harm, but Black people's existence on this planet and freedom of movement and history did not start
at US slavery,
at white people, did not start at the colonizer. Like, give me, like, it's just, to me, the diminishing of Blackness in this discourse doesn't make any sense. And so to me, unity doesn't care to make Blackness big. Unity is about a constricting and confining Blackness, a narrowing of Blackness that if I have to understand that Blackness in order for it to be Black and register as Black for me, as opposed to solidarity says, well, actually, I have not covered the mountaintop of Blackness. I have not seen all of the rolling hills of Blackness. And so that means I don't know all the Black stories that there are to be said, which means, guess what, fam? We got to do the hard work of telling each other's story and listening and bearing witness to each other's stories. That is what solidarity, Black solidarity, is about. And to me, it's just like, this is where, to me, it's like, why Black people also need to be anti-racist, because and it's not even white people specific. It's like we must do the work of undoing our internalized anti-Blackness so that I can better see other Black people, better understand other Black people, and start to really allow their stories to cross-pollinate with my stories. And so it allows for a deeper, richer understanding of myself. And I just think and we don't talk enough about the work that's on this side for us.
And I think that that's actually like the deeper or the more expansive the Blackness is, and the more that you interact with the nuance and the different ways that people are Black, you get to actually see the unifying experience, right? Like being Black in the Americas, whether it's in Latin America, whether it's in South America, Central America, the Caribbean, North America, there are common themes and there are common threads, and they're actually the systems of oppression are the same. The access to power is the same. The access to capital is the same. Being the capital is the same. Like it is a shared experience that is unique to the Western Hemisphere, not to these United States. And so when we talk about a global movement, like, you know, the Black liberation movement has pre-existed Black Lives Matter, but when we're in this moment of a movement that is conscious about our intersections and conscious about saying that all Black lives matter, there are two particular points of contention that we really need to be able to deal with for us to be able to achieve solidarity. And that is the experience and the needs of queer and trans folks, and the needs of undocumented folks, particularly, both of which who are vulnerable, not just to systems of white supremacy, but also from other, like, they are vulnerable from other Black folks.
Yeah, anti-Black violence. Yeah. And so, like, this is the work. So, like, if you're watching this, you're listening, the call to action here really is, how can you go deeper in your understanding of Blackness, and really ask yourselves and really look at the relationships you are in with other Black people. Is it you rooted in unity, or is it rooted in solidarity? And how you know the difference? You're having those hard conversations, you're having those clarifying conversations, and that relationship is constantly in a back and forth of renegotiation and understanding. Like, if it's all just kiki inside jokes and a collapsing of Blackness just to make it funny and easy, then that relationship is rooted in unity. I guess it's cool, but like, if the summer of 2020 happens again in 2021, you're gonna find out like that is that's gonna get real old and very harmful really quick.
And I want to highlight that, like, it's not just, oh, I read the book by so and so and I'm into noirism and I did this, and I, like, it is not a passive, like, solidarity is an active verb, right? You have to be in solidarity, you have to work on it, you have to show up for other people, and that means showing up for undocumented Black immigrants who are being deported despite there being a deportation moratorium. You have to show up for queer and trans folks that are disproportionately getting killed, you know, even in a pandemic. You have to talk about unpacking interpersonal and partner violence, right? You have to talk about the misogyny and misogynoir every single time it shows up, right?
Because that same energy we have for police violence, that the violence that Black people experience at the hands of the police, we have to have that same energy when we're talking about that many Black women are dying at the hands of their Black male partners. Same energy. Now, both of those violences are rooted from white supremacy. They're embodied and interpolated differently, but like, yeah, that we have to have that same energy. And how do we show up? I'm thinking over the summer, a trans woman was almost beaten to death by Black protesters at a social justice like protest. That's wild, fam. That's unacceptable, y'all. That's unacceptable. And so it's just like, we got to have our energy to tear down, divest, dismantle, and disrupt white supremacy has to always be at 10, no matter who the actor is.
Exactly. And I think that when it comes down to our political analysis and our policy analysis, it is not just about who is the best candidate for African American folks living in the United States in a certain income bracket that present a certain way, that have a certain gender expression. It's actually who is the best candidate for all Black people, right? And that's where we dig into not just the I'm down for reparations, but actually, what are you going to do about maternal mortality rates? What are you going to do about our foreign policy in the Caribbean and Africa and Latin America? What are you going to do about access to the social safety net for folks that are undocumented? What, like, these are the operationalized ways for you to be able to hold folks accountable, and like stay ready. Like I feel like operating in this Black body requires me to be an expert at so many things all the time, and everybody should feel that way.
If you stay ready, you ain't gotta get ready. Well, I think that's an excellent place to start.
Well, we actually hit most of our points. We did it.
We sure did. So y'all, like, share the video, rewatch it with your people, and come back next week. We already have the topic for next week up. And yeah, we're doing a thing. Like, as you can see, we're giving you quality content every week. So come back every week.
Come back for more. Bye, y'all.